Well, let's jump right into the teaching, and so we can get started tonight. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is adding supers in the spring. Now, it used to be, I was out biking this afternoon. I'm a cyclist, and I like to bike about 2 hours. And I was, going through my presentation tonight on my bike, and I was thinking about in the spring, how it used to be that one of the biggest things we would do as beekeepers, we would worry or hope for, would be that our bees would make honey. That was before the varroa mite and all the problems we have now with bees. But, now it seems like most people are hoping that their bees make it through winter. I don't see so much emphasis on honey production as it was when I first started 30 years ago. But now this picture is amazing. That ladder is not going to do it. So if you think about it, how high can you stack supers realistically? That's not realistic whatsoever. I'm sure that's photoshopped, and it's just not going to be practical. Nobody could get up there on top of that ladder. Even if you had a ladder tall enough, it wouldn't be wise to do that. But we do want to talk about spring supers, because I know many of you, you're into beekeeping because you'd love to get some honey, right? Honey is good. I'm about out of honey for myself, so I need honey. So let's talk about honey in the spring. What about adding supers? Here are the bullet points I'm going to talk on. I'm going to address leftover honey supers that you might have in strong colonies that they didn't eat their honey. I've got a few like that. I want to talk about leftover honey and dead outs. Dead out is a term that we use to refer to hives that died in the wintertime. I'm also want to talk about when to put on the honey supers in the spring. And I also want to talk about top or bottom super. If you don't know that, I'll get you educated on that. Queen excluder or no queen excluder. How to add several supers. Is it wise to add several at a time? And lastly, we'll talk about treating and feeding with the honey supers on. I think that probably hits on most of your topics of interest. I picked a black shirt up and didn't realize I had a Batman shirt on. So I'm Batman tonight. That looks kind of funny. All right. So leftover honey from strong colonies. What do you do with it? Well, you can, first of all, verify that it was not on the hive when you were using treatments, especially those synthetic treatments that you're not allowed to have honey supers on when you treat. So you have to be kind of a sharp cookie. You have to really read the label and understand which of the treatments you're allowed to have honey supers on when you're treating. And so, like if you're using oxalic acid or Formic Pro, you can have the honey supers on, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you were using some other ones, then you want to make sure that if you're going to consume it, and eat it or sell it, that it wasn't on the hive when you used a treatment for mites that does not allow you to have that on there. So verify all of that first. Now, what do you do with it now? I personally want to leave one super on there. I only overwinter with one medium-sized super. And so I want to leave it on there as a queen excluder, a queen barrier. And how that works is I don't use queen excluders usually. 99% of the time, I don't use queen excluders. And so I'll leave that one medium super above the two brood nests as their honey. I won't ever take that off usually. I'll leave it on there for them. Yeah. And when the queen goes up there, she gets discouraged. There's no place to lay. All the cells either have nectar or capped over honey. She goes back down to the brood area. So it's my natural queen excluder. That's what they do in nature. Makes sense, right? So that's one option. Another option, you can take this leftover honey super that overwintered on a strong colony. If you want to, you can take it off and you can move it to a weak colony that's struggling, and they could benefit from all that resource. That's one option. Another option, you could eat it. You could harvest it. You could harvest the whole thing, all 10 frames, because it's spring. They're gonna have more, right? Or you can take off a few frames. A lot of people tell me, well, we just want a few, frames for the table for our own good. And so some people will take 1 or 2 honey frames out and they'll harvest it just so they can have a little honey for themselves, and the bees can quickly refill that. So there's a lot of options that you can use your first overwintered honey super that's on your hive. So just think about those bullet points there. Okay, what about leftover from a dead out? That's a good question, isn't it? Well, first thing when people ask me, can I use the honey that was in a hive that died? First thing I say is, why did it die? I think that's a good question. Why did it die? Did it die of a disease? Did it die out of pesticides? And that would mean that some pesticides might be in the honey. So you want to always know, why did it die? Did it die just because it was too small or didn't have enough resources? Of course, if it didn't have enough resources, why would there be honey on there? So, there's a big question about, why did a hive die? Now, they could have been small in number and they just couldn't get to your honey super, and they were healthy in the sense that they didn't have any diseases or pesticides. They were just small. They were too tiny and they froze to death. In that case, it's clean. It's free of diseases. You just want to look back at your notes and say, did this hive have any diseases like American foul brood or European foul brood? But even those really don't affect our honey consumption. They're not bad for us. They don't, they're not going to hurt us. That's a brood disease that hurts the bees. But you want to think about those things too. I also think it's important to look at it and say, how does this honey super from a dead out, how does it look and how does it smell? And the reason I find that important is if a mouse got in there and urinated all over the place and raised their little babies in there and the whole thing smells like a mouse nest, the honey may have a off flavor, off smell to it. I would not eat that, and I would not sell that honey because there was a mouse in there. It may have not have been up there in the honey super, but it may just have a rotten kind of a odor to it. And so check all of that out. If it smells bad, I wouldn't use it. I would just discard it. Maybe see if the bees might eat it back again. But I wouldn't want to eat it or sell that honey. Now, also, if it's clean, if it's good, you can use it in other hives. Sometimes we start the year with catching a swarm trap, a swarm in a trap, or we might buy a new package. You might want to expand your apiary, get a nuke or something, a nucleus. In that case, you can use it in these other hives above your deep brood boxes to help them get a foothold and get going good. And of course, if it's really good and there's no problems, harvest it. If you don't have a need for it in your hives to help other hives, you can harvest it and have some spring honey to enjoy. Now, big question is when to put supers on in the spring. Well, it all depends. That's a great word that we like to use in beekeeping. When somebody asks us the question, we always like to say, yeah, it depends. Depends on where you live, how warm it is. It depends on, has spring sprung where you are, or are you still waiting like we are? It's a little too early for me to put my honey supers on. Let me explain why. I live in central Illinois. Like I said, Monday night, 13 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be really cold. And so, yikes, I don't want to put my honey super on because it would be empty, right? I'm wanting that to be on there. It may be drawn out, but there's no honey in it. That's my empty super for the bees to add honey to. So if I put that on there, heat's going to go up there. Heat's going to move away from where the bees are somewhat and keep rising up to that top box. So I don't want to do that just yet. I don't want them to have too much space up there, and they might move up there too, hoping for something, and it's empty. So I don't quite want to do that just yet until the weather warms up. So I'm going to wait until I know cold weather is over. And for me, I've decided that what I'm going to do is wait until I see the first few dandelions take off. And I'm going to gamble this year. That might be a tad early for me, but I'm going to go ahead and try it. And so see my first few dandelions popping up, I may go ahead and put my honey supers on. Unless they just come up at a ridiculous way too early time, like tomorrow, before Monday when it gets 13. I'm not going to do it. Now, one of the things I want to point out, and I get this asked of me a lot, is can I put my honey super on to control swarming? No, do not count on that as a reliable swarm control method. It is not reliable, because if it's undrawn foundation, new foundation in a honey super, the bees just see that as a desert. That's not going to change their mind at all. The other thing is adding more room above the brood nest area during swarm season may not divert a swarm, simply because a swarm in the spring, 9 times out of 10, is a reproductive swarm. It's a reproductive instinct. And so the bees are going to reproduce. So it's not a matter that they're overcrowded, they need more room. They are just wired to reproduce. And so giving them that super may not cut it at all. So you're going to have to make sure you're diligent about looking for swarm cells and taking the appropriate action to control swarms. We talked about that last week on the live stream, how to do that. So keep that in mind too. Now let's talk about bottom super or top super. Now, this terminology is good for you to know. If you don't know it, we say, David, do you bottom super or top super? Bottom supering or top supering? Well, what we're implying is, and this only works if you already have a super on, because if you have 2 deeps and you want to add a super, you're adding a super. You're not top or bottom a super. It only means that if you already have a super on there, do you put the new super under the one that's on there or on top of the super that's on there, the medium or whatever size super you use, the honey super? So that's what we're referring to. Some people have said, anecdotal backyard experience, which doesn't mean it's wrong. Some people said that if you put the new super that's not drawn out yet, if you slide it under the super that they're working on, that they have to walk through that new super that's just now above the brood box, and to get to the other super, and that's called bottom supering, and they think it works better. I personally like to top super because, like I just told you, I use my super that's above the brood nest area. I leave it there as a queen excluder. So the queen doesn't go past that or up in there. She stays in her brood nest area. So I leave that. I like to top super, and I've found they do just fine. They pull out wax just fine. You can watch my videos and you can see them doing that. So I like to and it's easier. You don't have to lift another box off and slide one under, put a box on. Less management and manipulation of boxes. Now, what about queen excluders? David, do I need to use a queen excluder? You know what? I think it can be helpful to a brand new beekeeper that's starting out, and now it's time to add their super, and they don't want the queen to get up there and lay eggs in their honey super, because then, they can't harvest it. And so sometimes I think it's a good idea for a new beekeeper just to put a queen excluder on there. That way, for sure, nothing but honey is going to be in your honey super above your brood nest area. Now, if you're a little confused on that, most of us here in Illinois, central US, we use 2 deep boxes, 9 inches tall, and those are the brood boxes. And then our medium supers go above that. So that's what I mean by put a queen excluder above the brood boxes and your honey supers on top of the queen excluder. So it can help a new beekeeper. I probably would say if you are experienced beekeeper like myself, then we don't use queen excluders. We just manipulate the queen, make sure she stays out of her honey supers. And for the most part, last year, I never found her at all up in my honey supers, even though I didn't use a queen excluder. She stayed down in her brood nest area. Very good. And recent studies have shown that hives with or without a queen excluder made no difference in honey production above the brood nest area. We used to call it a honey excluder. People would say, you put a queen excluder on there, all those poor worker bees are having to squeeze through there. They won't make as much honey. Well, that's been debunked by research, and now they make the same amount of honey. Yeah, and it kind of goes to say that bees, when they really want to do something, they get the job done. They're pretty efficient that way, and a screen's not going to reduce them from doing that. Well, the other thing is they make two types. They make a metal one that's surrounded by wood. Well, they make metal, just metal, and then they make metal that has wood on it around the edges, and they make plastic ones. So should you use a metal queen excluder or a plastic one? Yeah, use whatever you want to. I think it makes sense to me that the plastic ones are cheaper, I would think, than metal. But if you are someone that doesn't like plastic, by all means, use metal. So I have used both. I started out, beekeeping before there were plastic ones. And so we didn't have any choice but to use the metal ones. And, sometimes we would mishandle them, in the shop. They get stacked up somewhere. We would put them in a big fire on the off season to melt all the wax off. And sometimes the little wires get bent or something. And so they can fail, but the plastic can break. So it's just really a preference for you. Try both, see what you like. So yeah, I like to use my first medium super above my brood nest as my queen excluder to keep her down. I also want to talk about, what about adding several supers at once? Maybe you're the kind of person, and we used to do this in the old days, before mites, before small hive beetle. What else have we brought in that's bad? We could put 3 or 4 or 5 supers on there at one time in the summer and not even think anything about it and let them just fill them up. But now if you do that, your beetles are going to go up there and have a heyday playing around where there's unprotected areas. So be careful not to allow too much space above the brood nest with super, because the bees aren't going to be up there, and you're going to have wax moth and beetles in all that area where bees are not policing it in number. So you don't want to add too much. My suggestion, and I like doing it this way, I always like to make the bees start to think that it's filling up good, but before they run out of room, I add another box. Okay, this applies to your first deep if you're throwing a package together or a nuke together. When you have 5 to 7 frames drawn out with bees on it, I would add another box, either a brood box. And when I add my supers, I do the same thing. 5 to 7 frames of the super. They usually draw them out in the middle first. And that's when 5 to 7, half of them or a little more than half get drawn out. I'll add them another box on top of it and just keep. And that way the bees know, they're already making their way up. If you add them all on there at once, sometimes they can chimney. They can just go right up the middle. And it seems to take them longer to finally draw all that out. But so be careful not to add too many at the same time. And finally, I want to talk about, what about treating and feeding with supers on? Because, we want to add our supers, but we may still want to feed our bees. What do you think about that, David? Well, always read the label of all your treatments. So that's finicky, because some labels will say you cannot use their mite treatment with honey supers on. And so you want to be careful not to, kind of get yourself against the wall where now you want to treat for 56 days, but it's right in the middle of spring harvest or spring gathering of nectar. So, be careful not to get yourself in that kind of a bind. So my suggestion is, if you do need to control mites in the spring and you're wanting to put honey supers on, or you already have, use treatments that it doesn't hurt anything to have your supers on, like Formic Pro, doesn't matter. Oxalic acid vaporization, doesn't matter, doesn't hurt. So, use those things. By all means, stay away from those synthetic treatments where it does affect the honey. So you want to use that. Now, what about feeding your bees with honey supers on? Well, you've seen me do it. A lot of you question, aren't you feeding your bees with your honey super on? Yeah, that's the one that they always keep on there. That's theirs. I always keep one on there. Most hives have one medium super just for them. I just make that part of their whole brood hive. 2 deeps, one medium, that's theirs. And so I don't think twice about feeding with that super on there. Now, if I add supers for myself, I would never feed my bees when the bees are gathering nectar for my honey supers that I'm going to harvest. I don't feed during that time. And I would rarely ever treat during that time too. Even treatments that are allowed with honey supers on, I just don't have to during that time of the year. But so, be careful. Now, some people get confused, and many people have asked me, I had a honey super on there when I treated with, something like Apivar or Amatrez, and can I use that super again? No, you really shouldn't, because you violated the label, and it's not going to be good to do that. So that's some of those things that all of us as beekeepers, whether we like it or not, we have to be really good, mite treatment thinkers. We have to know the different treatments that are available. It's really important that we don't rely on other people to tell us, because the label's always changing. And whether we like it or not, and I didn't like it when it first happened, when mites first came in, but I had to be kind of a student of mite treatments. And it's not that hard to figure out. You'll memorize it all after a while, but just know which ones are best, when's the best thing. So a lot of times David, just tell me what to treat. Tell me what to use in the spring. What do you use? I want to do what you did. No, you don't, because my hives are different than yours. My climate's different. When I treat it is different than it is now. It's all dependent upon all the variations that are going on right that minute when you want to treat. Okay. So you have to look and know what is the best treatment based on what's going on. Okay. Oh, we have a word of the day in the live stream. I always share a word, and I have shared a bunch of them, which you can go on my website, honeybeesonline.com, click on that at the top, it'll say live. If you click on that, you can read all the past words that we've used to stay up to date. For those of you just learning about this, I don't want you to miss out on all those other words. But protandry is a word in beekeeping when the males, the drones, are produced early in the seasons before new queens. Protandry. And so that's really cool, because when you go out and start inspecting your hive, like I did a few days ago, I'm looking for drone cells or drones walking around. And if I don't see drone brood and I don't see drones walking around, I wipe my forehead and say, shoo, I don't have to worry about swarm season yet, because they're not raising any drones. They're really far away from raising queens, because they raise the drones first. Protandry. All right, that's a cool word, isn't it? I'm going to give you a heads up. I'm excited about speaking in Lawrence, Kansas. And this is going to be, that's really hard to see, Friday, June the 5th and 6th. Okay. So Dr. Peck and I want you guys to be aware of this. Okay. Some of you live in this area out there in Missouri, Kansas area out there, and you can make this trip. It's a fun day. But look, a lot of you have been wondering about raising queens. Dr. Peck and I are going to be together doing this ourselves on Friday, the 5th, June the 5th in Lawrence, Kansas. We're going to be there. We're going to be in the field. We're going to Dr. Peck and I are be teaching you guys how to raise queens in person. All right. This class is limited, by the way. That QR code may work, but I'm giving you a heads up early, because some of you really want to make, you need to plan your summer, and I'd love for you to be there. By the way, so many of you have been going to my conferences where I speak, and I appreciate that. I've met so many of you that are on Beak Squad. You watch the live stream. When I was in Wisconsin and Kentucky and Nevada, you were telling me, hey, David, I'm here, and conference directors, two of them told me that me sharing it on our live stream and on my videos, it increased their ticket sales by 1/3. And so Beak Squad members are showing up in force, some of you wear your hats and your shirts. Always great to see you guys at the conference. So I'm hoping I can see some of you there in Lawrence, Kansas for my queen rearing class. We're going to be in the field doing it too. We're going to give David and I be talking lectures. We'll be telling you how to do it, but we're going to be showing you in the field how to raise queens. Okay. And then the next day I'll be giving 3 talks with other speakers as well on June the 6th. So keep that in mind. Those are coming up in the future as well. All right, that wraps up the teaching portion of the live stream. And coming up in a little bit, we've got Spin the Wheel. We've got a lot of things on it. Your chance to win some things tonight. And I do have one giveaway I want to tell you about. When I was at the Kentucky Bluegrass School last weekend, wonderful opportunity to hang out with beekeepers, and loved it there. Loved it. Larry Connor was there, and I got to tell you, friends, I really like this book that his son put together, Beecabulary Essentials by Andrew Connor, and I love it. I mean, this time I bought 2. I thought, okay, I want to give one away again on my live stream, but I like reading it because it has all the terminology and it has pictures as well. And I think, I'm a tactile learner, and when I can see the picture along with all the vocabulary words, then keeps me fresh, because people like me, they're in front of you, we have to kind of remember things. And so this is a good book. And look, I'm going to give this away tonight. And I got it autographed by both Andrew, who wrote it, and his dad. Oh, sorry, he put to David. Sorry about that, but it's going to be your book. But Larry signed it as well. Larry is he's an astonishing PhD entomologist. Some of you don't realize that, but Larry really spent his career diving into queen biology. He was one that came up with midnight, starline queens and all. But anyway, going to be giving that away a little bit later too. That's going to be fun. So why don't let me check my list here. Oh, one of the things I want to say on our Spin the Wheel, Sherry added a new spot on there, and it's called Beak Squad member. And so we would like to ask all of you to consider sending us a photo of you, with your hive or just your picture or something, so that if it lands on Beak Squad member, then we can show a picture of you on our live stream. And you can send it to Honeybees Online. Let's see, Honeybees Online at here it is, honeybeesonline.com@gmail.com. Is that right, Sherry? I think you can just email us. It's on the website too. That helps. Pasting it in front of my face like that. Thank you. So honeybeesonline.com@gmail.com. Send us your picture of you wearing a Beak Squad hat or shirt or not. But that way, if it lands on there, we can show some of our friends that are here with us. So I want to make note of that. All right. Very good. Well, let's get into some questions and answer time for tonight. What you got on your mind so I can help you. I'm going to add my question now. Upstate New York had 3 beautiful days. I put out a half cup of pollen powder for 2 hives. Was told it is too early. Am I okay as long as I keep feeding them? Yeah, it's funny. I hear that a lot. People say, I was told. And what we have to do as beekeepers is come to our own decisions that what we are doing is something we want to do, that we know is good for our bees. And that's why we're doing it, because people will tell you all day long. Half the people will tell you you're right. Half of them are going to tell you you're wrong. Okay. In anything, not just beekeeping, anything in life. You drive your car. People say you're driving it wrong. I mean, it's just that way. So you make the decision. I think if bees are out there looking for something and there's nothing there, it's not wrong to give them something. Good grief. Wow. I'm going to add mine as well. Okay. That went away. All righty. I didn't get a chance to see that. Thank you guys for your donations tonight. I'm going to add mine as well. Lost half my hives to what appears to be nosema. I'm told by some that I should burn all my hives, that I had them, and others say I don't need to do anything. Okay, first of all, really, can you get that tested? Do you have any way to send that off to a Beltsville lab and have them see if they can detect nosema on that. Do you have just signs of dysentery? Don't burn anything until you get a confirmation that indeed you have nosema. That would be my suggestion. And there are things you can do without burning, but you'll need to really think that through carefully, because it can spread if they've defecated all on the inside. At least what I would do is change out my frames for sure. Yep. Started beekeeping this year. Congratulations. I wonder if that means 2025 or 2026. But my order of nukes was canceled due to excess winter losses. Must mean this year. That's too bad. I could only find one other supplier. However, bees will arrive in the 6th month. January, February, March, April, May. Well, that's pretty common. Panic time. I don't know. Not bad. Sometimes we can't get our nukes ready until June, where usually it's May in Illinois, because we have to overwinter and raise queens and all. That's not bad. You'll be fine. A nuke's ahead of the game anyway. You'll be fine. Good for you. It's too bad somebody lost all their hives, can't make nukes. What's going on? Hey, David, started feeding with my single colony, 1-to-1 additives a week ago, but they're not interested at all. Is this normal bee behavior? I'm in central Wisconsin. They survived the winter. Yeah, there could be a lot of things going on. It could be that they don't need it because they have a lot of honey on board. It could mean that it's too cold to go up in there to get that. It could be a lot of things. I wouldn't worry about it. If they want it, they'll eat it. It's there when they do want to get that. Yep. All right. David, my 3 hives appear to have made it through winter. Congratulations. I plan to mark the queens before splitting. Best to use last year colors. Oh, I see. I see what you're saying, because the queens aren't new this year, are they? Yeah. Well, if they were last year's queens, it makes sense to mark them with last year's color. Absolutely. Yep. That's what I would do. That's easier to keep track of that way, isn't it? Yeah. I made 2 of my swarm traps out of leftover treated plywood. Is that okay? So swarm traps are very sensitive. You know, you want your bees to fly into. Thank you for your donation. Appreciate that. As always. You want your swarm trap to be inviting to bees. The treatment, I don't like it. I'm not saying that it's bad or it may not work, but I want to be as natural as I can to just raw, natural smelling wood. Okay. So I kind of don't like that idea. I would not do that. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad or it wouldn't work, but it's just the idea. I mean, would you drink out of a treated wooden bowl? I mean, you know, we just don't like to do that. So yeah, that's a good question though. Freedom apiaries, Pat, East Tennessee. I have a hive where queen turned to a drone layer. I have a new queen tomorrow. Really? Wow. I want more information on, I guess that's going to ship to you probably. Can I get rid of the old queen and wait for a while, then introduce the new queen? Well, Tennessee, if you have drones, they might take that opportunity to start raising queen cells. I'm not sure if you're how more, further along in spring than I am. I don't know. I could get by with it because there's no drones. They're not raising queens right now. That's a good question. Yeah, it depends on your situation, whether your bees are ahead of me and they might start raising queen cups. I don't know your area. I lost two colonies, and there's diarrhea. We call that dysentery all over in the hives. Hearing that feeding sugar water could cause it or make it worse. Is that true? Here's the deal with that, friends. So the other day I made a video and I said, look, my bees are flying. They're getting water. Do you see that video? Look at all the bees in my gutter. And I climbed a ladder. I videotaped all the bees in my gutter. You know what the #1 comment was about that? that I need to clean my gutters. I'm like, I'm going out of my way to help you in beekeeping, and all you can do is tell me I need to clean my gutters. It's like, okay, I get it. I leave those leaves in there because as those leaves kind of break down, it provides more nutrients for my bees. And if you believe that, I've got a lot of other tales to tell you. But no, so my reasoning is if the bees are flying, they're defecating. And so anytime my stance on this has been true for 20 plus years. I only feed bees when I know they can take a potty break. I only feed them liquid when they can take a potty break. There, that's the answer to that question. First thing they do when they fly, they poop. So that's that. No, it doesn't. If they're flying, it's not going to hurt them. Not going to cause. It's going to help them to flush their gut out. Good grief. David, I made a split last week in North Carolina, and a few bees have been chasing us around for the last few days. One face sting while 30 feet away from the hives. Is this normal after splitting? You know, we've all had that. These are like real long, far out perimeter guard bees. And if they weren't out there kind of keeping things at bay, the place could be raided again. So they're doing their job, but unfortunately, you wish they wouldn't do their job to you, right? They're keeping their hive safe. That's kind of normal. It's not uncommon. So sometimes you just have to deal with that. They'll settle down. That one's going to die in a few days or a week anyway. No, I'm sorry to hear that though. First time beekeeper this year, a 2026 beekeeper. How spread out should my monthly inspections be to each hive? Every 2 weeks, do an inspection. Look for eggs. That's all you need to do on one of those inspections is just look for eggs. Make sure the queen's laying good. Don't have to find her. Close it up. 2 weeks later, you do a mite test. Look for eggs. Make sure everything looks good. Every 2 weeks is good. In swarm season, won't be your case probably since you're a new beekeeper, but over winter colonies, we have to look once a week for swarm cells, inspect once a week. I'm getting my first bees this spring. I was advised to purchase regular nukes, not overwintered nukes. Okay. I was told because they swarm easier. Why would an overwintered nuke swarm easier? And what is a regular nuke? Well, I've made nukes for a long time, and I always make nukes out of the bees that I have, and those bees had to overwinter. I wouldn't have any bees to make nukes out of. So the only reason nukes will swarm easier is because we pack. Here's the deal, okay? Let's be honest. Let's just get down to the brass tacks of all this right here. Here we go. You ready? I'm going to tell you the truth about all this. I think we've sold all of our nukes, but maybe there's a few left. But here's the deal. If I made a nuke that I knew would not swarm for 2 weeks after you got it, it wouldn't have as many bees in it. It wouldn't have the resources that I like to be in there. I want you to look in there and go, wow, this is a very packed, ready to go nucleus. It's got brood, it's got nectar, it's got honey, it's got bee. It's got all the things and they're ready to explode and grow in your hive. So they are on the verge of probably thinking about swarming because they're so packed. But that's what you want. You don't want one this week and won't swarm for a month, right? That's the game we play with nukes all the time. So we have to tear swarm cells out of our nukes sometimes. Okay, enough on that. I put up a swarm trap last week. How long should I wait before moving the trap to a new area if I don't catch anything? Friends, I've thought a lot about this. This is like fishing. If you don't live near a big commercial beekeeper their hives are spitting out swarms, if you don't live near a bunch of bees in trees around you, it don't matter where you put them. They're not swarming. They're not going to find your box. I could put swarms out here, traps. There's no beekeepers around me. It won't do any good. It might help me catch one of my own, but if I'm a good beekeeper, they won't swarm in the first place, okay? And so you're just probably going to have to leave it there. Do you need to add more scent? Swarm commander in there, refresh the scent a little bit. I would, before I moved it, I would maybe raise it higher. If you put it too low, you know, try different things, make it face a different direction. Yeah, I would wait. It's just like fishing, it really is. Yeah. I'm getting 7 packages the first week of April. I have 3 frames of empty comb. I have 3 frames of empty comb, 24 frames of funny honey, and 8 frames of better comb. Oh, better comb. Yeah. That's better comb is kind of like a plastic foundation that's already drawn out. Plastic? I think it is. Yeah. How, maybe it's wax, but I think it's plastic. How should I set up 10 frame deeps and 5 frame nukes? Yeah, that's a really kind of an interesting question. I would say put as much drawn out comb, natural drawn out comb in the middle of all those deeps. Okay. Whether it's a 10 frame box or a 5 frame box. And then I would only put 3 or 4 drawn out in the middle. And then I would put undrawn comb outside of that so they can start off laying eggs and growing in the middle on that drawn stuff. Then they can expand outward and give you more drawn out frames. That's what I would do. You got a lot of options there, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm going to have to give out some giveaways. Let's take one more question, and then we'll have a giveaway and spin the wheel. Hi, David. Wax moths got into some of my comb, both odd and fairly new wax. Some frames, 40% was affected. I scraped it out. Will the bees fill the area? Oh my gosh, I appreciate that comment so much. A similar thing to happen to me maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And there was a spot this big around that I had to scrape off like you talked about. And first week, the bees never touched it. You know, bees were in there. They were all like making new wax in the spring. Second week, they never touched it. Third week, they never touched it. Even though I scraped it out, they never filled that hole up because they just didn't like I don't know. And the fourth, it took a month for them to finally repair that. And that was in the spring when they were packing in wax and honey. So I have since, when I scrape things out like that, I will take excess wax, melt it down, and I will wax that area really good. And that way the bees can fill that up really fast. All right, look at this, friends. So good to see all of you here tonight. Spin the wheel is fun little game we like to play. Sherry's making all these hand signals. I must be doing something wrong. I think I need to steal second, according to Sherry. I have no idea what she's telling me. So I'm still going to give this book away, so don't forget about that. So let's do this. We have a lot of things on here. We're just going to jump into it and see where it goes. All right, let me get organized here. Got a bunch of cards. Where will it land? It landed on fact or fiction. All right, here we go. And get ready to leave your comments, okay? Get ready in the comment. Get ready in the chat. Here we go. My team can splash your comments up there. Bees can smell fear. Is that fact or fiction? Bees can smell fear. Fact or fiction? What do you think? You know, we think about sometimes people will say when you're working a hive, if you get scared, the bees can know that and they might sting you more. Fact or fiction? Can bees smell fear? Fiction. Fact. I see the comments coming in. Fiction. It's a trade-off. Fact. Fiction. Oh my. Okay. It's going back and forth. It's 50-50, isn't it? All right. Fiction. All right. Yep. I see fact. I see fact. I see some fiction. Fiction. All right. Well, let's talk about this. the first thing we need to come to terms with is, because sometimes people say if you're afraid of bees, they'll sense that. So it's not really people are saying they smell it, but they sense that you're afraid. And then they may sting you more because they sense that you're afraid. Now, here's the deal. Bees cannot recognize our emotions. You know, they're not sitting, they can't really determine if we're mad or happy. They don't have that capability. But they can smell a difference in perhaps your odor or your breath, and they will react differently. You know, like if you're angry or if you're mad, if you're throwing things and if you're yelling, yeah, they will act differently towards you than if you're calm and you're peaceful and you're relaxed. But actually smelling it on you, I'm going to call that fiction. Now, you may disagree with that, but I just don't think bees are able to smell fear in us, or they don't respond that way. All right. Want to spin again, Sherry? One more time? One more. All right, here we go. Oh, okay. We're going to give away the book that Sherry and I wrote. It landed on David and Sherry's book. And so here we go. Robbie can set that up. And so you can leave a hashtag here in just a second, and you can have a chance to win the book that Sherry and I wrote, Backyard Beekeeping. No advantage to entering multiple times. One time is all you need to do. And so the hashtag is paperback, hashtag paperback. So leave that in the comment, hashtag paperback. It's an autographed copy that Sherry and I will send to you. No advantage to entering in your name more than once. So do that. If you've already got the book, my goodness, don't try to win it unless you do want to give it away to somebody. Sometimes at conferences, you'll bring it up to me and have us sign it. So I always appreciate that. But keep in mind, Sherry wrote half of it and I wrote half of it. So we both worked hard on this book together. Yeah. All right. Let's see. We've got a few minutes here to take a few more questions while we're getting your hashtag paperback. When you place a large object in front of a hive or a split in a moved hive, do you gradually move the object away from the hive over a period of time? No, Danny, I don't. I leave it there in front of the hive, a week. And then after I see the bees are accustomed to their hive, I just move it away all at once. Just walk off with it. Yeah. When do you remove the winter insulation and the mouse guard? Yeah, I removed mine too soon. I'm going to have to put it, I didn't take it all off all my hives, but a few of them, and I'm going to have to put it back on tomorrow. So I'm going to wait until I know I'm out of the woods of cold weather coming in. Like it's going to be on Monday night. Yikes, 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Hi, David. We inspected our hive last week, and there was a started widened cell at the bottom of the frame, possibly swarming coming soon. Temps have been fluctuating here in Kansas City area. Okay, let's hold up a minute. When you inspected, I inspected mine, and I saw two, let's call them swarm cells on the bottom of a frame. Guess what? They're not new. They were there last year, and they're just there sometimes. They're little cups that bees haven't done anything. So my question is, are they left over from last year, or do you think they're really new? And second question is, do you have drones? And you would have to have drones in there for them to start raising their queens. And then were they charged? Were there any larvae in there? So sounds like you're probably a little bit warmer than I am out there, but yeah, not sure on that one. All right, let's take one more, and then we'll spin to see who wins our book. Hey, Donnie, as your supers are getting drawn out, do you move the outside frame to the middle to get them to draw out the faster? Now, you can do that. The idea is sometimes the bees will draw out the middle ones, and so you can keep cycling in the ones that are not drawn out toward the middle. It's not absolutely necessary. Do I do it? Absolutely not. I take things the easy way out, and I don't want to manipulate my frames and stuff anymore that I have to. My bees do fine especially in the spring when they're drawing out wax. Yeah. All right, Robbie, let's take a look and see who is going to win the paperback book Sherry and I wrote. All right. All you have to do is enter in #paperback for a chance to win the book. All right, we got all your names entered in. We're going to give it a spin and see who is going to win the book. All right. Look at all those names. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. We have a big crowd tonight. Thank you all for being here so much. Looks like George Keith, you're the winner. Congratulations. We'll autograph our book for you and get that sent out to you. Be sure and email us within 24 hours at beaksquadwinner@gmail.com so that we can send that to you. All right, here's the book. Beecabulary Essentials. And I paid for this with my own money. It's not a paid promotion. But if you do want to get this, WICKWAS, WICKWAS, wickwas.com is where you can buy these if you don't win tonight. But anyway, we're going to give one away, and it's the hashtag, going to be a hashtag. Robbie says, give me a minute here. And so you can have a chance to win this book tonight. Beecabulary Essentials, really a good book. BEECAB, okay, did you see that go by the screen there? I love the imagery on here, and I love all the bee vocabulary words. BEECAB, hashtag BEECAB in the comments, and you can win this book. Wow, did you see that guy covered with bees? My gosh, that was crazy. Where'd he go? His whole body was covered. Look at that. Oh man. Wow, there's a lot of bees. There you go. So anyway, that's a great book, autographed by both Larry and his son that put the book together. So you'll enjoy this book. All right. Bee vocabulary. Let me squeeze a couple of questions in as we close out the hour. We're getting close. Hey, David, when your bees are ready to swarm, have you ever tried to set an empty hive in front of the hive that is getting ready to swarm? I probably have, unsuccessfully though. The first landing is a bivouac. They're not going to stay there long anyway. So they already have a place picked out generally. If not, the bivouac, they'll decide. Why not simply place a queen excluder on the bottom to keep the queen from swarming? You can do that, but not very long. Your drones can't get out. They will die and clog it. But you can do that off and on temporarily. Yeah. All right, Robbie, let's go ahead and spin to see who will win the Beecabulary Essential book tonight. All right. Here we go, my friends. Woohoo. Exciting. Here we go. Who's it going to be? Franklin Locke, you're the winner. You won the book. Congratulations. Email us within 24 hours. beeksquadwinner@gmail.com. Wow. Hey, that was a quick evening tonight, my friend. Wow. Thank you for being here so much on the live stream. Appreciate it so much. Want to thank Robbie, Sherry, Jessica for doing a great job tonight, keeping it all rolling smoothly for us here on the live stream. Thank you all for your donations as well. I appreciate you so much. I just want you to know that you mean the world to me. As you know, I'm not just about bees, but I'm also here to encourage you, to entertain you, to just edify you, and making sure that you enjoy bees and life altogether. So thanks for watching my YouTube channel here on YouTube, my beekeeping channel. I hope it's been inspiring. All the videos I make are to make you a better beekeeper. All right, well, I will see all of you in the next video. See you soon.